Okay, so today we're looking at leaders of Congress. And so go ahead, you'll need at least four cards. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so Speaker of the House is, of course, right now Nancy Pelosi, and she's a Democrat from California. She's been Speaker of the House before. She's one of the few people that's been Speaker twice, and lost the speakership in 2010 when Republicans won back the House. But Speaker is like the most powerful position in Congress for sure. Flip over to the back side. First off, it the Speaker of the House is the presiding officer of the House. Now, to preside means to be in charge. So you'll want to get that. To preside means to be in charge. They're running the show. They run the show. All right. Next, this is an office that is constitutional. It is named in the Constitution in Article 1, Section 2. You don't have to write Clause 5. However, I just want to put that in here, actual wording from the Constitution. It says the House of Reps shall choose, love their spelling, their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment, which we shared that one prior. So Article 1, Section 2, it's a real office that is named in the Constitution. And then selected by the majority party. So Speaker of the House will be selected by whichever political party has the majority. So if you look on the charts below in the 114th Congress, remember we number Congresses every 2 years because we elect a new House of Representatives and a third of the Senate. Control 114th House, that was Republican. They won a big victory in the midterm elections that year and had a 246 seat margin, 246 to 186. Then the 115th Congress, 2016, Republicans won again, but Democrats gained a little. And then now we have the 116th Congress, which the Democrats just won the majority about a year and a couple months ago. And they picked the Speaker of the House. All right. Next, on the same card, fourth bullet point, they are second in line to be president after vice president. So Congress sets up a U.S. presidential line of succession. And if you look at the line of succession, everyone's always interested in this. You see, obviously, the first line of succession goes to the vice president, Mike Pence, then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and then President Pro Tem of the Senate, Chuck Grassley. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the cabinet secretaries. And you can see all the bureaucracy, cabinet secretaries, starting with Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, Secretary of Treasury, blah, 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 blah. You can't see it down bottom because I have a little hot. Let's hit this here. You can see the 17th one is Homeland Security, and it's the newest one that was added. So it's at the bottom. And Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, she cannot be president because she's not a natural born American. But second in line after the president. To be president, I should say. Another big power of the speaker is to have power over committee assignments. So remember, all House members, all Senate members serve on committees. This is where a congressperson really has huge influence over bills and what's being written and what's being added to it. And the speaker, in this case, Nancy Pelosi, has huge power over who's on what committee, who are the chairs, and so that's a big, powerful thing. And if someone like ticks her off, like they'll give you a crappy committee. If you vote the way she wants you to all the time, then you might get a better committee. So this is a very important power. These are the standing committees, and a standing committee just simply means it's permanent, like it's always meeting. And you can see a huge list here of them. There's 18 standing committees in the House. You can see science, rules, resources, judiciary, agriculture, budget, armed services, education, government reform, veteran affairs. I'm kind of skipping around when I say this. So all these things, and they'll be they get appointed to that based on what Nancy Pelosi wants to do. And perhaps the most important part of being Speaker of the House is you control the agenda of the House. So Nancy Pelosi is the person who sets what the agenda is going to be and what they're going to vote on. and what's what she wants to happen and what's going to get introduced. All right, that's the Speaker of the House. Next, President of the Senate. Since the Senate is Republican, the President of the Senate, I'm sorry, let me check that. President of the Senate is Republican because the Vice President is Republican. In fact, President of the Senate is the Vice President, and in this case, Mike Pence. And the Vice President is the presiding officer, which means they're in charge. This is a constitutional office, Article 1, Section 3. And you can see here's Clause 4. The Vice President of the United States should be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they are equally divided. So it's really weird. Like the Vice President is like a President of the Senate, but he's not a member. And at the same time, they don't have a vote unless it's equally divided, unless it's a 50-50 vote and they're tied. He can only vote as the tiebreaker. That's the only time the Vice President actually can vote in the Senate. So get that down. Can only vote in case of a tie. But the reality is the vice president is almost never there. Rarely do vice presidents go and sit in the Senate. One of the famous examples is, of course, the first vice president, John Adams. He actually would sit there and he would give like these long-winded speeches and just go on and on and on and on and on forever, and everybody like freaking hated the guy. But rarely is the vice president there, and when he's not, then they have what's called the president pro tempore, which actually we just say the president pro tem. And you see the root word of tempore is temp, meaning like short term or part time. And so a president pro tem is appointed in the Senate, and they are actually the next thing. So president senate's the vice president, in charge of the daily proceedings, can only vote in case of a tie, but is rarely there. And so there's a president pro tem. If you need to pause, finish it up. All right, 213, president pro tem. We just talked about that. Remember, temp means like temporary. Okay. So the temporary president, when the vice president is not present, is the president pro tem. They are the presiding officer, the person in charge, when the VP is not present. That person is listed in Article 1, Section 3. So, as you can see below, what the Constitution says is that the Senate shall choose their other officers and also a president pro tempore in the absence of the vice president or when he shall exercise the office of the president of the United States. So, like, president drops dead is what they're saying. Um, Typically and usually, they are the longest serving senator of the majority party. So, since the Republicans have the majority of the Senate, right now, the longest serving senator is Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who has been there since like the 1970s. The guy is older than dirt. And there he is. I think he's 86 or 88 years old. He's pretty old. And he's president pro tem. And just again, the president pro tem is third in line of succession to the president after the VP and the Speaker of the House. So it's kind of fun. Again, everybody always likes really line of succession. What would happen when the State of the Union happens? Most of the cabinet comes and listens to the president, but there's always like a person they take away and send them somewhere else. So that way, if somehow the at the State of the Union, the entire Senate and all of the president's cabinet are wiped out with a bomb attack or something, then they have like they've hidden away the Secretary of Treasury or the Secretary of Defense or somebody to be president in that lieu of everyone being killed. So President pro tem, third in line succession, president after the VP and Speaker. All right, last one, majority leader. Now, there's a majority leader in both the House and the Senate. I want to be clear about that again. There's a majority leader in both the House and the Senate. However, their power is a little different. Because the House has a speaker, the speaker is the most powerful person, really. Party leader, and the presiding officer combined. But in the Senate, that those powers, party leader and presiding officer, are split because of the VP's role. So split it over, and what we call the majority leader is we call them floor leaders. They're the ones who run the debate, the voting on the floor. And you remember we said floor means the literal floor of the House and the literal floor of the Senate, where everybody has a seat, and that's where they vote. So House and Senate floor leaders, majority leaders in the House. Let's go over there. So right now, in the House, they are the most second most powerful House member because the Speaker is the most powerful member of the House. The Speaker is the most powerful person in Congress because she is both the presiding officer and she is the party leader. So right now, Steny Hoyer, a Democrat from Maryland, he is the second most powerful behind Nancy Pelosi. And they are the leader of the majority party in the House, elected by the majority party, obviously, like as leader. Usually they're people that have been there a long, long time. In the Senate, it's a little different. Because the VP is the presiding officer, the majority party leader in the Senate is right now Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky. And Mitch has been around a long time, and that's why he is the majority leader. And he is the party leader, whereas in the House, Nancy Pelosi is the party leader and the presiding officer. Mitch is just the majority party leader. That's it. So, but he is the most powerful person in the Senate. Nancy is the most powerful person in Nancy Pelosi is the most powerful person in the House, but in the Senate, Mitch McConnell really is more powerful than the presiding officer. The presiding officer in the Senate is a little bit more of just like a figurehead, and the real power is held by Mitch McConnell, the majority party leader. Not as much as Nancy, but pretty powerful. So the most powerful senator, whereas in the House, second most powerful because Nancy Pelosi. But Mitch is the most powerful senator. And Mitch also, because he's the most powerful senator, he gives a lot of the committee assignments. He's kind of in charge of that. And if you tick him off, you might not get the committee you want. And being on the committee means influencing issues that maybe your constituents care about, and that helps you get reelected. All right. That is that. All right. So go ahead and study those, and then you'll have some other things to do. Thanks.